Be still and know. So the talk today is about strength, and I didn't realize until I did the research for this talk that our strength comes from our stillness, which was pretty amazing to me. Did you ever feel like you just didn't have the strength to go on? Did you ever feel like, I don't know what it's going to take? I'm feeling overwhelmed. Life circumstances have given me things that have brought me to my knees. Maybe it was the loss of somebody. Maybe it was a diagnosis that took your breath away. Maybe it was a financial crisis. But the bottom line is that it comes down to the same question: how can I go on? How can I get through this? And how many people here have experienced something like that in their life? Yeah. And look, we're all here, right? We're all here. And how did that happen? It happened one step at a time, one phone call at a time, one breath at a time. And the reason I say this is to remind us that strength doesn't happen quickly. Spiritual strength, physical strength, mental strength doesn't happen quickly. It takes time. I remember when I lost a very significant person in my life, and I had no idea how I was going to go on. And it was, just really taking it a breath at a time, and the support of my friends. We have a couple here, and I'm sure there's many of us, but we've witnessed Ray and Marianne, faith and strength in them in this last year that have been profound. Your faith and strength have been inspirational. And Ray asked me to remind us all that it was from the strength of all of us that supported him. It's a give and take, and it comes from within. It comes from that place, that Christ consciousness within us. I use the word Christ. If people have resistance to that word, just remember it's divine mind, it's principle, it's law, it's enlightenment, whatever you want to use. Don't let the word Christ take away from the message of what I'm talking about here. So Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, introduced the 12 powers of the Christ consciousness. And they're referred to as the 12 divine faculties or the 12 abilities of the subconscious mind. And we all have them. We all have them, and we can either work with them consciously or we could just let them run our lives and not be conscious of how powerful or how empowered they can allow us. And in the Old Testament, the 12 powers are symbolized by the 12 tribes of Israel. And in the New Testament, it's the 12 disciples. And Jesus chose these 12 men based on their characteristics. So he saw something in them and he called them forth because he knew these were the powers, these were the things that he was going to need to get him to that Christ consciousness that he was here to teach all of us. So Jesus said, "Of myself I do nothing. It is of the Father in me that does the work." So it is the I am within each of us that does the work. And it is that I am within each of us that is each of these 12 powers that we're going to be going over until we've gone through all 12 of them. And by doing the same, by all of us calling forth these powers, and Jesus trained the disciples, right? So we're going to train these powers within us if we choose to transform our lives, So Jesus also said, "The things I do, you can do even greater." The things I do, you can do even greater. And that means you, and 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 you. Everybody here, you, and you, and you, and you, and you. We can do what Jesus did and even better. And it's really about applying these 12 principles to the highest of our ability. Last month I talked about faith. And I'm going to ask questions. So if you guys know the answers, just blurt them out. And who remembers what faith is? Anybody?
Trust.
Trust, that's part of it. Yeah, absolutely. believing. Faith is the power to believe, right? And it's also the spiritual assurance that we need in order to have an unwavering, enduring faith in God, which will lift us to our higher consciousness. Now, when everything is good, who's got faith? Right. And when things aren't so, and I use the word good, but if things are in a way that we don't like them, or if we're struggling, where's our faith? Sometimes it's not as easily accessible, right? And that's where strength comes in, the power of strength. That's when we have to pull on that power of strength that's deep within us. So, when I was growing up, I remember now I'm one of 7 kids. I was the middle child. And we ranged from 9 years old to an infant. So there was 9 years difference. And I can remember times, my mother was very religious. She went to church every week. And then once we left the house, she started going to church every day. But as a little kid, I can remember there were times, usually when it was raining out and we were all in the house together, I can remember her saying, "Oh, Lord, give me strength." Lord, give me strength, right? And I didn't know exactly what was going on. I didn't know why she needed that, but I just said, God, give her the strength. I don't know why she needs it, but please answer her prayers, you know? So, it's interesting because at the time, it wasn't that big of a deal. But when I witnessed, many years later, my dad had to have brain surgery. He had been into a car accident, and a month after the car accident, there was a brain bleed. And he was showing signs of a stroke. So they rushed him to the hospital, and it turned out that there was like a puddle of blood on his brain. So they had to drill 2 holes in his skull and get the blood out. So I go to the hospital, and there my mother is in the waiting room by herself. I'm like, where is everybody? I know my siblings were there somewhere. And she said, oh, they went to get something to eat. And she's looking at the Sunday paper. She's going through the ads, cutting out coupons. And I'm like, well, how you doing? She's like, oh, I'm fine. I said, you look fine. Like, what's up? Your husband of 50 years is having brain surgery right now. And she looked at me, and you could have pushed me over with a feather. She said, God knows what's best for your father. I don't. And I completely trust that. And I was just like, okay. Yeah. It was like, I guess, and it wasn't until I was writing this talk that it dawned on me, God answered her prayers. She had such strength and such faith that it was pretty unbelievable to me. Anyway, so how and why are faith and strength connected? Because we need strength when life surprises us with things we do not want or like, since our minds think all the time, and that's where our faith faculty is in our mind, right? And we have to stay on top of our thoughts, to think those God thoughts, to think the thoughts, to be reminded that we are one with God, to be reminded of the laws and principles. So we call on our strength to keep coming back to what is true, what is true, what is real, what is God. And it's interesting because strength is the ability to endure, stay the course, last, be persistent, persevere, and be stable. And it's the color of like a spring green. And it's located in the small of the back, right here. And it's interesting because it's the home of the sacrospinalis muscle, which is one of the largest muscles in the body. It has 9 divisions, which start down at the low back and go all the way up into the brain. So physically, our faith center and our strength center are physically connected. Then also, it's interesting because the Apostle Andrew is the apostle that's symbolic of strength. And in Greek, Andrew means strong. Does anybody remember the apostle of faith, for faith? Peter, exactly. And Andrew and Peter were brothers. And so when you call upon the brothers, right, Andrew and Peter, you have a spiritual team that will carry us through anything. It'll carry us through any kind of adverse circumstances. Now, in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, and metaphysical means, you're going deeper than the words, right? We're going to dig a little bit deeper than what the words actually mean on the surface level. When strength finds faith, and they are brothers consciously in mind, a bond of unity is established that carries one along, even though one may encounter the most adverse circumstances. So you can't have faith without strength. And in order to have strength, we must have faith in something that gives us faith. So it's really interesting the way they work together. In the revealing word, strength is the energy of God. It's freedom from weakness, stability of character, power to withstand temptation, capacity to accomplish. And all strength originates in spirit first, and thought, and then word, and then manifestation. So we all know that we can have physical strength, right? And that's the ability to move things, push things, put pressure on something. And we can also have mental strength, which allows us to, hit our goals and get through things. And they're needed and they're helpful in our life. But really our spiritual strength, the power of strength, when we develop it, is stronger than both of our physical strength and our mental strength. It is believing that God is good and we are one with God no matter how separate we look and feel. To have that strength all the time, to have that kind of faith, to have that kind of belief. And it takes time to cultivate it. And as we cultivate it, as we consciously cultivate it, it gets stronger and stronger. So more recently, I used my faith faculty when I walked on fire at Edwin Gaines. And I might have told you guys the story, but you're going to have to hear it again. It's a great story on strength. So at Edwin Gaines, we were there for 3 days. And from the beginning, we knew that on Sunday we were going to be, I think it was Saturday, I don't remember what day, but we were going to be walking on fire. So from the beginning, she said, don't worry about it. The day of, you're just going to go in and ask your higher self if you can walk on these hot coals and not get burned. So the day of, the fire walk comes, and actually we're down walking around the coals. And, as you're doing this walk, you're asking, okay, spirit or God or whatever you want to call it, your higher self. I said, can I walk on these coals and not get burned? And the answer was very clear, yes. So I get up to the coals, and I'm ready to walk on them. And there was no way, there was one cell in my body that was going to let me walk on these coals. And I'm like, I'm out of here. And I turned around and I walked away. And it was interesting for me to see how I allowed my ego to be afraid, or my fear, to tell me not to walk. But it only took me a few steps to realize what I had just done. And I ran back and I said, okay, this is a huge lesson for me, because it made me realize where else and how many other times in my life had I asked Spirit something, and Spirit told me, and I didn't do what Spirit said because I was afraid. And I didn't like the way it was going to feel. So it was like, wow. So that was really it was such a great moment for me to realize the strength, my spiritual strength right there. I said, you know what, I'm going to listen. And it helped me to go on. It's only been a couple of months, but I've seen how I've grown from that and been able to say yes to things that I've been really afraid of. And to say yes to things and to really not have as much fear about them. Like at the retreat when I got up to sing, I really wasn't as petrified as I have been in the class in previous years, which was very interesting because I still think I sound terrible, but it was very interesting for me to say, okay, I'm going to do it anyway, I kind of let go of that part of my thoughts. So our strength is, bottom line, the strength is to be used so that we can be the best Christ that we can be, or the best divine self that we can be, or the best enlightened being that we can be. And so we use our strength to attain this goal. And if that seems too lofty, okay, then say, I'm going to use my strength to be the best me I can be. Quite frankly, I think it's the same thing, but somehow it might make it feel a little bit easier to be the best that you can be. But there has to be a belief first, even if it's the size of a mustard seed. And as we use our strength to reinforce that belief, it becomes easier and easier to attain that goal. So Ed Rabel, he's a biblical scholar, and he kind of gives us the how-to in building our strength. So to establish a consciousness of strength, we must know what it is. Many people think of it as force or exertion or physical pressure. But these are methods of using strength. They are not strength itself. The Bible gives us a clear definition of strength in Isaiah chapter 30, verse 15. For thus said the Lord, God, the Holy One of Israel, in returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. So what's that saying? Where do we get our strength? Quiet. Seeking, going into the stillness. There's many, many stories of Jesus going to the top of the hill, going places to pray and meditate and being in the silence. And that's where he improved his conscious contact with God, and that's where he built up his strength for all of the miracles that he was able to perform. So one of the things that became really interesting was that there's not a lot of stories about Andrew in the Bible, and even though he's symbolic of strength. And one of the stories that he was in is in the story of feeding the 5,000 people. And Jesus was saying to the apostles, okay, we got to feed these people. And like, just tell them to go home, just tell them to go home and feed themselves. He's like, no. We're still teaching here. They got to eat. And so they're like, well, we don't have any money. We can't go buy them food and everything. So Andrew said, he saw this boy that had 3 loaves and 5 fishes or something like that. And the point was, so Jesus raised up what he had and he blessed it. And from there, they asked people to look at what they had. So that's one of the teachings in strength, is to look at what you have and build on it. That's where we get our strength, right? One phone call at a time, one friend at a time, one step at a time, and we build from there. And guess what, guys? What do we always have within us? God. We always have God within us. God is us. God is part of us. So we can always count on that. We can always build on that. It was interesting. Our spiritual strength depends on our degree of spiritual awareness. And I remember a couple of years ago, I don't remember if it was fires in California or the floods, but, the news interviews all these people, and there was this woman with her husband and her kids, and she was devastated. She's like, I've lost everything. We've lost our home, and she's crying and everything. And the next person that he interviewed was a woman with her family, and she's like, my family is here. Everything else can be replaced. And I was like, wow, what a striking difference in perspective on the strength of each of these two people. Now, it could have just been that moment, maybe the one woman would break down and whatever, but I was just really impressed at that moment. So I just want to say what strength is founded on. This I thought was really interesting. In Genesis, it says God created man and woman. And in metaphysics, the man or the male is the thinking part of us, and the female, or the woman, is the feeling part of us. So each and every one of us have male and female within us, right? Even though we're showing up as a gender of a man or a woman, we each have male and female within us. We all have thinking and we all have feeling. So strength is established as two become one, and the increases as greater balance is achieved with thinking and feeling. So as we get comfortable with our thoughts and our feelings being in alignment with one another, we increase our strength. I thought that was pretty cool. And he also talked about the Samson and Delilah story, where, Samson is this really strong guy with long hair, and he falls for Delilah, this beautiful woman. And, while Delilah is like brushing his hair, and she's saying, Samson, Samson. And Samson's going, oh, Delilah. He's like really falling for her. And he falls asleep. But really, Delilah was his enemy. And Delilah shaved his head, which in the Bible, hair is vitality. So she took away his strength. And, it's interesting because the deeper meaning of it was the female, the feeling nature, which is Delilah, was not in harmony with the male, the thinking nature, which is Samson. And in today's world, think about it. You and I, we know the right thoughts that we're supposed to think, right? We come here every week. We know the right thoughts that we think. But what happens? Negative thoughts come. Things happen in our life, and we forget. And we're actually pretty strongly attracted to negative emotions, as Samson was to Delilah, right? You think about that attraction to each other. And our attractions to our negative emotions cause our positive thinking to fall asleep, just the way Samson fell asleep. And that gave Delilah the opportunity to shave his head, to take all of his strength away from him. So, and it's interesting because Samson's hair is symbolic of vitality, which is an action word for strength. But the fondness for negative emotions can squander our strength. So when our thoughts are out of harmony with our feelings, or our feelings deceive our true thinking, the male and female within us is at odds, and our strength faculty is depleted. So just a different way of thinking about it. But anyway, to gain our strength, we must learn to be still. Stillness restores our strength because strength is stillness. Strength and stillness are required to heal. They work together to bring health and harmony back to the body. Stillness and strength support faith so we can stick to the ideas of God, truths, principles, laws of the divine nature, and be stable and durable and persevere. In the book Jesus Christ Heals by Charles Fillmore, he says the first step to health is to get still. Anyone can get still. Any person can get still. So any one of us can find health and healing. It is our spiritual strength to be used for spiritual reasons, like being the best Christ that we can be. So instead of using our strength to protect our property, fight our enemies, or get what we want, it could really be used for things like build a higher consciousness of all humankind, and do whatever will improve the well-being of every living creature. This is a strong man. One of the last examples of strength I watched my mother do was the day she died. My mother always wanted us around. She had 7 kids. She always wanted her family around her, so much so that she remodeled her house so that on the 2 holidays a year that we all get together, her dining room was big enough that we all sat in the same room. No one was in the kitchen, no one was in the living room. She had it remodeled so that we could all be there. So we found out she had cancer on December 2nd. On December 15th, we got a phone call at 2:30 in the morning that she was very close to dying and that we should all get there. So we all got there, and we all sat around her bed, and she looked each and every one of us in our eyes. And then she starts struggling with her oxygen mask, right? And so my sister Lois says, "Mom, do you want help with that?" And she says, "Yes." And she just took her oxygen mask off and died. And it was like, wow. You know, she was so ready. She used to say to us, when it's my time to go, it's my time to go. And I'm ready. I'm ready to go home. So I was just once again blown away with her strength and her faith, that even when it came time for her to die, she was ready to go. It was pretty amazing to me. So let's summarize. Strength looks at what we have and builds on it. We always have the Spirit of God. We are made in the likeness and image of God. So we always, always, always have that. And strength also asks us to use what we have. So it asks us to be authentic. It asks us to get rid of the story like, oh, that's the way it's always been done. Oh, I don't want to change things. Strength wants us to change. If you look at the people in this church who have gotten up and found their voice, that's coming from the strength within us. That's coming from that place of wanting each and every one of us to shine our light as the God being that we came here to be. So to be still and know. And finally, to bring together our thinking and our feeling, because each and every one of us can find that balance, and that's going to improve our strength. So let's just affirm, I am one with the stillness of God. I am the stillness of God in my strength. I am one with the stillness of God. The stillness of God is my strength. I am one with the stillness of God. The stillness of God is my strength. And one last time. I am one with the stillness of God. The stillness of God is my strength. And so it is.